All right, what's going on, guys? This is Rob, and I got a tweet that I need to specify here, right? Basically gives us this kind of depiction of like who the Illuminati basically are in Doctor Strange 2. Now, again, I need to specify this is just rumor and conjecture. Nothing's been confirmed. The only real confirmation we have, or seemingly confirmation we have when it comes to the Illuminati, is the voice of what sounds like Professor Xavier. Although, I mean, hell, at this point, right, Multiverse of Madness, it could just be Jean-Luc Picard from Star Trek, right? You know, the Borg are the cause of all of this, Doctor Strange. You know, who knows? I mean, it is probably Professor Xavier. But that's really where I want to start here, right? I want to kind of run over who I imagine these members of the Illuminati are. So, the first one on this tweet that I was given, right, this DM that I was given, is Professor Charles Xavier, specifically from the Days of Future Past timeline. Now, here's the thing, right? Here's bear with me here, right? Bear with me. I know a lot of you guys are going to be like, no, that's ridiculous. The Days of Future Past timeline doesn't exist anymore. That's true. Kind of. So here's the thing, right? Now that the Fox properties are owned by Disney, it means we're not playing by the Fox universe rules anymore. We're playing by the rules of the Marvel Multiverse. Now, the big difference between the way Fox handled things and the way that Marvel handles things is Fox essentially had linear time. Marvel has the whole multiverse. I mean, Fox kind of had the multiverse in the sense that it's like a Fantastic Four movie here, and well, really a couple of Fantastic Four movies here, right? So like the original cast, and then the one with Michael B. Jordan and Kate Mara and all them, and then like the X-Men movies and so on and so forth. But you guys get what I'm saying, right? The idea of a multiverse existing in Fox was more due to circumstance as opposed to anything actually being organized and planned out, and us being told like, there's a multiverse, and the Fantastic Four are in this universe, and the X-Men are in this universe, and so on and so forth, right? It's just kind of a hodgepodge of things. But when you look at the idea of linear time, right, this is like if you right now went back to when Bitcoin was first introduced to the world and invested $1,000. Then when you come back to the modern day, you're going to be like a billionaire or a trillionaire, right? The past directly affects the present. When it comes to the multiverse, that's not necessarily true. Assuming that the Marvel Cinematic Universe follows the Marvel Comics model for the multiverse, which there's nothing to guarantee that it does, what you have is basically branch universe theory. For every possibility that exists, there exists a universe for it. So if you went back in time and you invested $1,000 in Bitcoin when Bitcoin first showed up, when you came back to the present day, you would basically just still be yourself, which is the reason why you went back in time in the first place. Your actions in investing $1,000 in Bitcoin when it was first introduced created an alternate reality where you became a billionaire in that alternate reality because you invested in Bitcoin. Now, again, we don't know exactly how the multiverse works in the MCU. Even in No Way Home, Doctor Strange said, we know virtually nothing about it. I think we'll learn a lot about it in Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness, and I think the Illuminati will be the ones to give it to us. But at the end of the day, the big question you kind of have to ask here is, if it is Professor Xavier from Days of Future Past, and that Days of Future Past timeline is basically destroyed, then how in the world do you end up with Professor Xavier from Days of Future Past in Doctor Strange 2 Multiverse of Madness? I think the answer to that is from Spider-Man No Way Home. Now, I don't mean to say that like Professor Xavier is one of the people who knew Peter Parker was Spider-Man and he was yanked into the universe because of the spell that went awry between Peter and Doctor Strange. What I mean to say here is when you look at Spider-Man No Way Home, what was the explanation that was given to us in terms of how it is that Green Goblin and Electro and Sandman and the Lizard and Dr. Octopus were all in that movie? The answer is that they were plucked out of their own universes. Now, the truth is that because the spell went awry and because Doctor Strange wasn't able to close it off in time, that they were able to make it in where most everybody else was essentially kept out. The question I would ask here is, what's the difference between that and someone just appearing to you and saying, we need your help? And that's what I think was going on when it came to Professor Xavier, assuming this idea is that it is him from the Days of Future Past timeline. And so using that basis, it's entirely possible that what was basically going on here is that the Days of Future Past timeline is an actual collapsed dead timeline. Whether the MCU decides to borrow from Marvel Comics and say that universe, that timeline was just kind of shuffled off to the far shore where universes go to die, or just simply cease to exist, is actually irrelevant here. Borrowing from Spider-Man No Way Home, it's not that far outside the realm of possibility that in that scene from X-Men Days of Future Past, when the Sentinels break in and their eye beams are getting ready to blast everybody, and Magneto and Xavier and Kitty Pryde and Wolverine's body on the table, and I think Bobby Drake was there, right? In that moment when they're all getting ready to die, before they disappear, somebody shows up and grabs Professor Xavier. Now, this, I think, gives us the second member of the Illuminati, and one that seems also a pretty obvious choice here, and I would say that's Baron Mordo. The reason being is that Baron Mordo very much follows the rules. Baron Mordo is a person who does not believe in arbitrarily adjusting the timeline in order to fit personal gain. Like literally, he wouldn't shut up about it in Doctor Strange 1 and kept yelling at Stephen Strange about breaking the rules for his own personal gain and so on and so forth. And so you have to believe that if someone appears at the end of the Days of Future Past timeline and grabs Professor Xavier before the timeline basically comes to an end, whoever appears there would have to have the ability to stop time. Otherwise, they would end up there just in time to see everyone die or disappear, right? So it's not that far outside the realm for Baron Mordo to appear and to basically freeze time and then tell Xavier, we need you. Like, we need your help with what's going on out there in the multiverse, different things along those lines. Now, why it is that he would pick Charles Xavier of all people doesn't really matter. We don't really care, right? It's just, we would get Charles Xavier from the X-Men in Days of Future Past, so they could give us the most nonsensical hand-wavy explanation where Baron Mordo's like, I've been looking through the multiverse, Professor Xavier, and I'm just enamored by your bald head, and I figured you'd be a great member of the Illuminati, and we would be like, that's awesome, right? Who cares? We have Xavier in the movie, and that's all we really care about. But in terms of why Baron Mordo would pick that version of Charles Xavier, that would actually make a lot more sense. Remember, Baron Mordo cares about the rules. Baron Mordo does not believe in bending the rules, changing time for his own personal gain. If the Days of Future Past timeline is basically a collapsed, dead timeline, that timeline is effectively going to end, that version of Charles Xavier is simply going to cease to exist, then it's not breaking any rules. He's not like screwing up the multiverse by showing up to a version of Xavier who's about to cease to exist in like 30 seconds and then saying, hey man, we need your help. Don't worry, your timeline's gonna be saved. Everything's good. Wolverine basically finished the job. Mystique didn't kill Bolivar Trask. Everything's copacetic. Things are gonna go back to the way that they're supposed to be. Your timeline's gonna die. We need your help. And he basically plucks Xavier out of his own timeline and then brings him in as part of the Illuminati. No real rules are broken. There's no damage going on with the multiverse because it's not like Days of Future Past continues on. That universe is dead. It's gone. It's out of the picture, right? So there's no real need for it, right? It's like stealing a radio from a car that you're about to destroy. No one's gonna miss it. No one's gonna come looking for it, right? So these other picks really seem to fall in line largely with what we've seen over the MCU, or closer in line with like the nature of the comics. So if we say that like Baron Mordo from the main Marvel Cinematic Universe is the second member of the Illuminati outside of Charles Xavier, and in fact Baron Mordo is really more the first because he's the one rounding people up, then while Charles Xavier's brought in for whatever reason makes sense, his expertise on mutants, I guess, I don't know, probably something to do with like Scarlet Witch or what have you, that the next person to grab would probably be Reed Richards. Now again, my pick here is John Krasinski, and I kind of reference back to our trailer breakdown video where I say one of the things that the Fantastic Four are best known for is charting the multiverse. More specifically than that, being able to look into alternate realities, right? Being able to look into alternate universes and basically give us these different depictions and see how things transpired, right? Having what's called the bridge. Reed Richards has the intelligence to do that. If you're the Illuminati and you are basically wanting to understand what's going on with the madness of the multiverse, but like you don't want to go in there and have to deal with that craziness, then sure, you would construct a window, right? It's basically like if there's just some giant riot or some giant fight going on inside of a grocery store. There's a pretty good chance you won't actually go into the store, but you would do like most people and just look through the window and watch all that insanity unfold. That's basically what the bridge is, right? So having Reed Richards would be a great person to bring in order to achieve that, in order to basically say, you need to construct a bridge into the multiverse so we can actually see what's going on there. Again, why he's choosing Reed Richards, who knows, who cares, right? I mean, it could be anybody who could do this, but technically Reed is the smartest person in the entirety of any universe in Marvel Comics. Like, it doesn't matter what universe it is. In any alternate reality universe, it doesn't matter. The main Marvel universe, alternate universes, whatever, Reed is always the smartest guy. Technically, it's Reed, Doctor Doom, and then Reed's daughter Valeria who kind of alternate these three places. But the next person here, and this is one that's particularly interesting, would be Captain Carter. Now, apparently Captain Carter is a really popular choice choice right now for the Illuminati, one that a lot of people are really co-signing on as like a person who is officially part of the team. And in reality, it makes sense. The idea of Captain Carter being in the Illuminati really seems to be more based on circumstance as opposed to like anything intrinsically valuable about her character. The first circumstance is that, as far as we're aware, Chris Evans is like, I'm done with Captain America, at least for right now, or unless Marvel cuts me a fat enough check. But like I'm taking a break from like this whole thing with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That only really leaves Peggy Carter because of the What If episode. Now, in the What If episode, of course, as you guys saw, she basically ended up traveling through that portal and essentially killed whatever that demonic beast happened to be. But the ability to face off against that kind of threat and succeed would really seem to indicate like fortitude and perseverance, confidence, that kind of a thing, the kind of attributes you would look for in what's really like a natural leader able to garner forces. The funny thing about this, though, is that when it came to the Illuminati, the bigger role that was played when it came by Captain America under Jonathan Hickman's Avengers: The New Avengers is that he was the voice of reason, right? He was the one that would basically bring people back and calm people down. The biggest issue you have here, though, is that at that point in time, Xavier was dead. He was killed in Avengers vs. X-Men, and Xavier was normally the voice of reason. And that's what we would expect, right? We would expect Charles Xavier to play the voice of reason. So why Peggy Carter would be there, other than the fact that like, hey, it's Captain Carter, cool. I don't really know, right? I'm not 100% sure. But moving beyond her, we go into Superior Iron Man. Now, I am a big fan of the rumors that Tom Cruise is playing Superior Iron Man. I imagine just the name is gonna piss off a lot of people, where he's like, I'm the Superior Iron Man. And the reason why I think it's gonna piss off a lot of people is because I imagine they're gonna be like, so that's basically Tom Cruise saying he's a better Iron Man than Robert Downey Jr. But honestly, it's a genius marketing move by the Marvel Cinematic Universe if they do that, because that's gonna have people talking. I mean, I can imagine the Twitter hashtags right now, right? Hashtag Team Stark, hashtag Team Cruise, right? People who are like, who is really the better Iron Man? Iron Man's exceedingly popular. So introducing an alternate reality counterpart to Iron Man and then calling him the Superior Iron Man, it really is going to create a lot of discussion. Not only that, from what we've seen, at least in terms of the rumors and whatnot, Tom Cruise having 3 of the Infinity Stones, Tom Cruise successfully turning the Ultron AI into really like the whole suit of armor around the world idea, actually being able to create the Iron Legion the way it was supposed to exist, all of that would really point to the idea that he is actually a better Iron Man, at least in terms of him being able to do the things he was supposed to do or wanted to do, than essentially Tony Stark, right? Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man, right? Again, that's kind of up for debate. But the more important thing here in terms of why he would be part of the Illuminati is that Tony Stark is well known to be what's called a futurist, that most people think about the present day, right? Reed Richards' whole idea, for example, is he wants to solve the problem of everything, right? Like everything wrong with the world, I want to solve that. Hence the reason why he created the Future Foundation, the reason why he temporarily joined the Council of Reeds, all that kind of stuff. Tony Stark doesn't care about any of that. So a really good example here is that when the incursion started in Jonathan Hickman's Avengers: The New Avengers, Tony Stark right off the bat knew there was no conceivable way that they could basically stop the collapse of the multiverse. Analyzing all the variables, all the odds, he knew there was no way that could be done. But what he also realized is that people needed hope, and they needed a distraction. That's the reason why he got with Captain America and created Avengers World, where basically they would unite all these different superheroes around the world into one giant Avengers team, and they would all basically fight different threats and so on and so forth in their parts of the world, right? Big Hero 6 out in Japan, Alpha Flight out in Canada, right? Any of the other teams that exist here in the United States, and it was just one great big huge distraction. It would also mean that if Captain America's doing that, he wouldn't be thinking about what Tony Stark's doing, why he's missing for like 3 months at a time, when in reality he's out gallivanting around with the Illuminati. But the truth is that he was just like, there's no way for us to win. He knew that before it all started, but he just kind of let everybody go through the motions because it was better than everybody just giving up and just letting everything die, right? Everything he did, creating the Dyson sphere, right? Literally harnessing the power of the sun, that it was all basically a useless effort, and he knew it was. And so that's what makes Tony Stark so significant. That's why he would be such a great asset on the Illuminati, is because he thinks about what's coming 50 steps down the road, whereas most everybody is thinking about what's happening in the here and now. Now, the next person that was really brought in with this, and this is a really, really interesting one, and probably one that I think is going to incite a lot of debate here, is basically Maria Rambeau. Now, the other part of that is I've heard that it could be Monica Rambeau, basically a variant of her that instead of becoming Spectrum, ended up becoming Captain Marvel. I would say that if that's the direction that they're going with, it's a variant of Captain Marvel, it would stand more to reason that it's Maria Rambeau, because Maria was around at the time that Carol became Captain Marvel, right? She wasn't necessarily in that exact picture per se, but she was part of it to a degree, right? They were operating at the exact same time. So events basically transpired a little bit different, and Maria Rambeau ended up becoming Captain Marvel. It could also be that while Maria Rambeau was Captain Marvel, she passed her powers down to her daughter. So instead of Monica becoming like Spectrum, she ended up becoming Captain Marvel instead, right? Inherited her mother's powers. That's happened multiple times in Marvel Comics, not specifically with Carol Danvers, because the only time she ever had a kid is when basically Immortus, an alternate version of Kang, gave birth to himself through her. Yeah, it's every bit as weird as you think it sounds. Like I promise you it is. It was a weird and pretty badly written story from Avengers number 200. But nonetheless, it would make more sense that this would be Maria as opposed to Monica. But regardless, it also fits like the depiction of the person that we saw who was facing off against the Scarlet Witch. Now again, people are still saying that it's entirely possible it's Tony Stark. Honestly, it's difficult to tell. Rumors are still circulating around, which I'm becoming a little more of a fan of, that it's some alternate version of Kang the Conqueror. It doesn't really matter. But when it comes to the last two members here, these are particularly interesting. The first one is basically a variant of Black Bolt of the Inhumans. I can't really envision why they would have him there outside of the fact that Black Bolt was a member of the Illuminati in the comics. The reality here is that in both the Inhumans terrible show that we got, that I watched one episode of and was like, nope, and then turned it off. And then like in the comics, Black Bolt doesn't really serve a useful purpose. The only time Black Bolt was ever important in Marvel Comics was when he became like the leader of the Kree race and then went to war with Vulcan, who was like this ridiculously powerful brother of Cyclops of the X-Men, and they tore a hole in space, and then eventually the Cancerverse came out. Black Bolt has never mattered. The guy can't talk, right? The guy never talks. I mean, if he has what's called a quasi-sonic scream, so if he speaks, it would basically eradicate everything. Depending on what era of comics you're reading in, his voice is powerful enough to just destroy an entire planet, and other times it can just make people's ears bleed for a while. So like it's super inconsistent. So I don't really know why, you know, he's even considered here as a possibility for a member of the Illuminati. But more so than that, what's also really interesting is that there are people who are circulating around rumors saying that it's potentially Balder the Brave or somebody like Magneto. As interesting as those would be, I don't really see them introducing someone who is, by all standards of measurement, as obscure as Balder the Brave is. Unless you're ridiculously familiar with the Asgardian mythos, whether here in the real world or in comics, you're probably not going to know who Balder the Brave is. Unless you played Baldur's Gate. That was a really good game back in the day. But you're not really going to know who Balder the Brave is. You may have like heard the name. Though they would have to do a pretty good chunk of explanation. The only way to really get around that is to say that like he is the brother of Thor and he's actually the god of thunder in some alternate reality. Done, right? That's the only way you could really get away with it, is to relate him to somebody people are already familiar with and then say he's a variant of that person. And then like that's basically it. But the last choice here is really the more interesting. And honestly, I think this is one that's really going to incite a lot of debate. Again, in case you guys have, because we haven't really mentioned it for a little while, but in case you guys are kind of lost track, these are the rumors that are circulating around out there, right? So again, none of this is really absolute or written in concrete, but the final person that seems to be a relatively popular choice for the Illuminati is Black Panther, played by Michael B. Jordan. Now, here's the thing, right? Here's the thing. I could see this being the case, and for a couple different reasons, right? So the first thing is that the way he's depicted here is that he is depicted in the black and gold outfit that we saw in the first Black Panther movie. But one of the other things to understand is that Michael B. Jordan would not be playing a variant of Eric Killmonger. He would be playing a variant of T'Challa, meaning he would be the son of T'Chaka, the rightful heir to the role of the Black Panther. I'll be honest with you guys, this seems cool. It seems really, 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 really cool. In terms of why they choose this version, the most obvious answer here is they can't use a variant of Chadwick Boseman. The reality is that it's just too early to know whether or not that would be acceptable. The only way to know whether or not they could use like CGI to basically digitally recreate the face of Chadwick Boseman would be to see how people respond to whatever it is they end up doing in Black Panther 1, right? It's a very tedious and a very touchy situation, right? This is one of those things. When it comes to the whole idea of like Chadwick Boseman, Black Panther, you're quite literally walking a knife's edge. Make one false step and it all comes crashing down, right? Remember, social media loves to be angry, right? They absolutely adore the concept of being pissed off. And so having that opportunity to be angry because of how something was handled incorrectly in Black Panther, people would be over the moon for that, right? They're just laying in wait, licking their lips for the chance to be upset. And so having to walk that sort of tightrope is something that is exceedingly difficult to do. And so if they were going to give us a depiction of Black Panther played by somebody other than Chadwick Boseman, using an alternate reality variant is the best way to do it. It's the absolute best way to do it because they can test bed it in a very, very easy and dismissible way, right? So if they're just kind of like, okay, like people aren't really receptive to Michael B. Jordan, then it's kind of like, all right, I mean, the movie's already shot. They can't make a whole lot of changes, that's basically it. And then we never see or hear from him again, right? Or something along those lines, right? It's just never ever referenced and that's basically it. Whereas if people are receptive to the idea of someone other than Chadwick Boseman playing the role of T'Challa, then suddenly you basically end up having a situation where they basically recast Chadwick Boseman or recast T'Challa as someone other than Chadwick Boseman in terms of any future depictions of Black Panther in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So with that being said, guys, these are the kind of rumors, and honestly, these are my picks when it comes to the Illuminati and the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I agree with some of these choices. Don't we agree with the idea of Black Bolt? Black Bolt sucks. That guy doesn't matter. No one cares about Black Bolt. Black Bolt doesn't even care about Black Bolt. Marvel doesn't even care. Like, no one cares about Black Bolt, right? Like, if God exists, God forgot he made Black Bolt, right? I mean, the guy doesn't matter, right? Like, the guy's just totally irrelevant. And like, literally, if we were in that movie and like the guy just had a building fall on him and was just totally destroyed, no one would care. They would be like, all right, cool, whatever, man. Or it could very well be that like the Marvel Cinematic Universe makes Black Bolt the coolest he's ever been, right? Maybe he's super badass, like he was in House of M, when he basically whispered and wiped out like a square mile of land. It was nuts. Like, he literally just whispered and just annihilated. He was so OP in the House of M storyline. It was ridiculous how broken he was. But with that being said, guys, we're going to bring this to an end. Let me know down in the comments section what you guys think about these different picks. And yeah, I will catch you all later. Peace.